So episode 3 of Dune Prophecy has been released, and it mainly takes place in the past, and focuses on the history of the two Harkonnen sisters Tula and Valia, particularly developing the character of Tula. There's more world building in this episode, and it focuses more on the machinations of the Bene Gesserit Order during young Valia's life. We'll break down everything that happened in the episode, and I'll offer some insights and thoughts into what occurred. So it starts off with Valia having just confronted Desmond Hart, and being barred from the palace, but she's determined to keep her influence over the Great Houses and the Imperium. We get to see the whale fur trade on Lankeville, the homeworld of House Harkonnen, and this is a first for Dune. We've never seen this before, even though it's mentioned in the books. And this builds a visual representation of the Harkonnens in the past, and how they became as we know them, and I think this is what this episode tries to do. They're just a house trying to survive, not the terrible villains we've seen in the Dune movies. It's a harsh environment on Lankeville and seemingly a bitter cold one. We see Polly Walker in this episode as Sonya Harkonnen, playing the mother of Tula and Valia. And you might recognise her from shows like Rome and Bridgerton. What's clear is the family don't care for Valia very much, who is headstrong and makes her opinions known. But Valia has a soft spot for her brother, who's probably the only one who really understands her. And her brother Griffin Harkonnen was going to secure a better trade deal in terms of welfare, something that Valia mocks, so she clearly doesn't believe in it as viable. Which means that she has other ideas, and we learn that it was Griffin who gave Tula her precious trinket, which she then gave to Lila. So it really shows that she cared about Lila deeply. Then they bring up Vorin Atreides at the table, clearly someone they have strong opinions about. Tula saying, "What do you mean Vorin? Vorin Atreides?" I'm afraid I didn't like this piece of writing in the scene. This is purely for us, the audience, to know that Vorin Atreides is someone of import. But she should clearly know who Vorin Atreides is because she has such a vendetta against the Atreides, which we will learn later. When Valia hears that he's in the capital, she sees this as an opportunity to get him to change his mind or to recant what he said about House Harkonnen during the Machine Wars, where they were disgraced, branded as deserters and cowards, which is why they were banished to Lankeville. And I'm sorry, I have to bring up something that took me out of the scene. Her pronunciation. She says Abulard or something like that. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be an Arabic name, pronounced Abul Ard, which means the father of the earth. So it's an Arabic name of import, and it hints at some Middle Eastern heritage amongst House Harkonnen. And this is why sometimes pronunciations are important, because Frank Herbert drew from different languages to imply where they came from originally, whether it be houses or weaponry or cultures. And if you scratch your head as to why House Harkonnen would have an Arabic name for their grandfather, it's the same reason why history would call it a Butlerian jihad. Arabic is a common language in Frank Herbert's future, so are other languages like French. House Riches is supposed to be French sounding, but in the TV show it's Richesi. It wasn't supposed to take me out of the scene, but it did. So yeah, Abulard is definitely not the one. But Valia hails him as a hero, saying that he didn't commit atrocities in the war. And they use some very interesting and strong language in that scene. Valia clearly blames Vorin Atreides for their whole family's dishonor. It shows what House Harkonnen were reduced to, and Valia wanting to reclaim what they used to have as a house. Then you get a scene between Valia and her brother Griffin, and it could be a scene right out of Game of Thrones. The setting, the swelling cello, big Winterfell vibes. I think this was a conscious decision by HBO, but this is the scene that establishes that Griffin is really on the same wavelength as his sister, and he admires her ambitions. They also speak of a time when Valia saved her brother from drowning by using the voice. He heard her voice call out, and he swam back to shore. So this establishes a very early power that Valia had in using the voice, a power she didn't even know she had. Rather than focusing on a better trade deal, Griffin decides to take Valia's course of action, which is to track down Vorin Atreides and convince him to restore House Harkonnen's honor. Clearly this goes very badly because immediately the scene afterwards we see him dead. This was a bit of a shocker. I thought he might have more scenes. Huge loss for Valia, and House Harkonnen in general. This really changed Valia's life, and that was when she was sent to Wallach 9 to join the Sisterhood. Then we go back to adult Valia, and at this point the Sisterhood are aware of the names Shai Hulud and the Maker, and this is technically correct. If anybody would know about this, it's the Fremen and the Sisterhood who are implanted amongst the Fremen, when they sent out one of their sisters to Arrakis, with the goal of seeding the planet with their Missionaria Protectiva, ensuring the safety of any Bene Gesserit should they land on the planet. Again, Valia is determined to keep her power over the great houses, and she learns that Lila didn't survive the agony. They don't call it the spice agony because they didn't use spice. I've noticed a few people confused about that. They use the Rossack drug to induce the agony. She learns that the prophecy refers to Desmond Hart. We then go back to Warlock 9, where we see Lila is alive in a comatose state. And this is the true danger of the agony. If her sister should fail, she's alive but her consciousness is lost. Tula is offered some spiced tea. As delicious as that sounds, it does come across as extravagant and incredibly expensive because spice is expensive and a rare commodity, and it's strange that it's a luxury they can afford. We even learn that Valia drinks a cup every day, which is even more extravagant and incredibly expensive. It really does look delicious though. Where is this wealth coming from, is the question, and I hope we get this answer later in the series. My guess is that because Griffin was so passionate about the whale fur trade, that Valia focuses on the trade in honour of her brother. Their trade did well, and perhaps this further helped fund the sisterhood. Sadly, Lila's chances of survival seems very low, and that there's only one option when someone fails the agony, and that is to let them go. Of course, Lila being Tula's favourite, she's absolutely not willing to let her go anytime soon. Then we see a scene of Tula in love with someone, talking about being introduced to this man's family, and we think nothing of it other than a romantic scene. So Tula followed Valia's advice of leaving the homeworld, but how much of her advice did she really follow? We get to see that later. A young Tula demonstrates that she's very skillful in handling herself. She understands toxins and poisons and how they work. Early signs that she'd fit right into the Bene Gesserit. Then we see some strange foreshadowing where her lover's horse has to be put down, and Tula has so much compassion for this horse that she uses the toxins to kill the horse more humanely. Meanwhile, on Warlock 9, Valia is being trained by the Sisterhood, and there's a clear tension between Valia and Dorothea, who we know she later kills, by using the voice. So she uses the voice to both save life and take life. Even amongst the Sisterhood, she is headstrong. We get to see more of young Francesca, her mindset, and she seems to be someone who isn't particularly faithful or believes in anything. Again, it's the same divide between the faithful and the faithless, similar to what was portrayed in Dune Part 2 with the Fremen. So this will be reflected in adult Francesca's personality, who will be played by Taboo. We get a Bene Gesserit practice which I'm not really convinced is necessary, when they stand in the elements no matter what until they're convinced that they will put sisterhood above all. As teachers of these students, why would the teachers stand in the rain themselves? Why wouldn't they use some kind of umbrella or shield? That didn't really make sense to me. And this happened in a previous training exercise as well. I guess there are no teacher privileges on Warlock 9. But this whole scene is clearly to demonstrate that Valia doesn't believe that she belongs amongst the sisterhood, and so she's the last remaining person to put sisterhood above all. We know that this eventually changes because she literally says sisterhood above all when she's older. We get to see more of Mother Superior Rakella and how the bond between Rakella and Valia formed. And Valia was able to use the voice on Rakella, which impressed her. Despite Valia not proclaiming sisterhood above all, she was invited inside by Rakella. Rakella asks about the voice and if it ever happened before, and they talk about humanity and essentially talk about Valia's future amongst the sisterhood. Back with Tula, she prepares a stew and gives it to the people. We learn that those people are Atreides. Has Tula fallen in love with an Atreides? It seems so, because she proceeds to tell him that she's a Harkonnen and she seems quite regretful about things that transpire. And her lover seems to take this well, Ori Atreides. So he clearly was in love with Tula, and I don't think she expected this response. She was hoping that he would hate her for being a Harkonnen. And perhaps it would make what she had done easier on her, because what she did was truly terrible, and there was clearly no going back from that. That pot of stew she prepared was poisoned, so her goal was to wipe out the Atreides, showing that Tula is also a formidable Harkonnen. And not even her lover was spared, because she used a syringe filled with poison on Ori Atreides, in the same way she put down the horse. If you reflect on it, she probably wiped out those Atreides in the most humane way possible, similar to how she put down the horse. So it shows that Tula is willing to kill, but not by truly violent means. This doesn't excuse what she did, but it shows that she has more compassion than perhaps, say, Valia would. And she shows that compassion even more by letting the Atreides kid go, which perhaps resulted in the survival of the House Atreides. So we have Tula to thank for that, for better or for worse, in terms of humanity's future. So in some ways this links Tula to the prophecy of Tyrion Arafel and the Tyrant. It does seem that Tula really did love this man, which makes it even more tragic. And then she sees the majestic Seleucid bull, one which will similarly kill Paulus Atreides in the future. Meanwhile on Wallach 9, they portray Dorothea as quite sinister. I'm not really sure I like the attitude towards the faithful and how they're portrayed in this show. These core principles are what saved humanity to begin with from the AI machines. And it's interesting how she says this out loud about the thinking machines when Reverend Mother Akella passes by, as though she knows about the technology that she's keeping hidden away, and that she protests it. Mother Superior Akella calls in Valia and Dorothea to undergo the agony, but Valia doesn't take the drug. Sister Akella does. I would have thought by this point, if she was teaching students, that she would have already taken the drug or undergone the agony. Valia is then summoned by Mother Superior Akella, and she learns of a secret message from Tula that the terrible deed is done, that the Atreides have been taken out, and that their brother is avenged. And Rakella knows exactly why she didn't take the drug and undergo the agony, because she still has deep ties to her house, the Harkonnens, and her family. Rakella then gives her an ultimatum: take the drug, undergo the agony, or don't come back at all. Valia then goes back to Lankerville and meets with Tula for the first time in years. She confirms if the Atreides are dead, and confesses that she didn't think that Tula could go through with it. The whole family are aware of what happened, and of course they blame Valia for it, and the family shows that she is clearly not welcome anymore, and her mother truly doesn't want anything to do with her. This pushes Valia over the edge, and she uses the voice against her, in a very unexpected move. Fantastic editing and sound design, completely different to the ambient background noise and conversation going on in the house, so it took me completely by surprise. A very effective scene. It was also nice to see Mark Addy in this episode, doing a great job, delivering realistic emotions, and grounding the Harkonnen experience. He was of course in Game of Thrones as Robert Baratheon, and we're going to get to see him more in the next episode. Valia then decides to undergo the agony and take the Rossack drug, so clearly she returned as a Reverend Mother to Wallach 9. And back on the planet, the Sisterhood say goodbye to Lila, but Tula clearly isn't going to give up on Lila that easily. Meanwhile, it seems that Valia has gone home to Gedi Prime, if that is the planet they're on, and she meets Yevgeny Harkonnen, who seems to be inhaling spice to prolong his life. We'll learn about why Valia meets him in the next episode. Back on Wallach 9, Tula goes underground for a mysterious purpose. She holds what looks like spice gas, stuff that guild navigators would use to inhale. How she has this stuff I do not know, but it's very interesting. This could be the setup of the guild navigators, which we may even get to see some of in this series. If not in season 1, then perhaps in season 2. And this transforms guild navigators into the creatures that they become, to fold space, for space travel. It seems that Tula wants to preserve Lila and prolong her life with the spice, but this seems like a very dangerous thing to do, especially with spice gas because it's the most potent form of spice. Is Lila at risk of becoming a mutated human from the spice gas, like the guild navigators? It's hard to say, but it's a very interesting and scary prospect, and I hope we definitely get to see more of what happens to Lila as a result. And that ends the episode. What did you think of Dune Prophecy Episode 3? Do you think Lila is going to be transmuted? Do you see Tula differently now? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and click the bell so that you can be first to be notified of new videos. Check out some of my other Dune content or some of my other popular culture videos here.